The colony hung in the void, silent and broken. Fires flickered in the remains of shattered buildings, their glow swallowed by the endless black of space. The once thriving human settlement was nothing more than a graveyard now. Debris floated where homes and ships had stood. No voices, no life, only the cold emptiness of destruction. The alien fleet hovered above, their warships gleaming under the dim light of a distant star. Their job was done. Humanity had been taught a lesson. Grand Admiral Xalzor of the Krill Dominion stood aboard his massive command ship, surveying the aftermath with satisfaction. So fragile, he muttered. So weak. The Krill had expected a challenge, a real fight, but what they found was disappointing. The humans barely put up resistance before their defenses crumbled. Their ships, primitive and slow, had been reduced to drifting wreckage in minutes. The ground forces had fared no better. The colony's defenses were nothing but outdated cannons and a few scattered fighter squadrons, none of which lasted long. Xalzor had expected more. The Galactic Council had spoken of humanity as a rising power, something to be watched carefully. But now, he saw nothing but an overestimated species on the edge of extinction. "Send the final message," Xalzor ordered. His communications officer pressed a few controls, and his voice echoed across the remains of the colony. "This is the will of the Krill Dominion. Humanity is weak. Humanity is nothing. And humanity will kneel before us, or perish. This world is a warning. Surrender before we come for the rest of you." The transmission ended, and silence returned to the ruined colony. There was no response, no desperate calls for mercy, no human voice rising in defiance, just the empty remains of a civilization that had fallen too easily. Xalzor turned to his second-in-command. "Prepare the fleet. We move for the next target. The humans will soon understand their place." The Krill warship shifted, their massive engines igniting as they prepared to leave. But then something changed. The stars seemed to flicker unnaturally. A strange, low hum vibrated through the ship. Xalzor frowned. This was no ordinary sensor reading. It was something different. "Sir, we're detecting an anomaly," one of the officers reported. "Coordinates unknown, but it's close, very close." Xalzor turned toward the massive viewport, his mandibles clicking in irritation. "Clarify," he demanded. The officer hesitated, then shook his head. I don't know, Admiral. It's not any known energy signature. He stopped, his eyes widening as the reading spiked. A deep, unnatural disturbance rippled through space, as if something massive was forcing its way into reality. Then it happened. A tear in space, blacker than the void itself, erupted in the distance. Not an explosion. Not a simple distortion. It was a rupture, an opening into something beyond their understanding. The Krill warships, once so dominant, suddenly seemed small as a shadow began to emerge. First came the glow, eerie and unnatural, a deep crimson light pulsing like a heartbeat. Then came the silhouette, something impossibly large, something beyond their expectations. Xalzor felt his breath hitch. It was a ship. No, not just a ship, something more. A behemoth of metal and fire, slowly pulling itself into existence. The sheer scale of it dwarfed even the largest Krill warships. It was sleek yet monstrous, its hull plated with a material that defied conventional design. Towering gun batteries lined its sides, each one crackling with untamed energy. The ship bore no insignia, no markings. And yet, everyone watching knew exactly who it belonged to. It was human. A voice, deep and thunderous, rolled across the Krill fleet. It was not a transmission. It was not a standard communication. It was something more ancient, more primal. "You thought we were weak. It said, the words heavy with something deeper than anger. Now you will understand what you have awakened. The Krill fleet hesitated. For the first time, uncertainty crept into their ranks. Salzer stared, unblinking, at the nightmare that had just emerged. This was not the response he had expected. The battleship, still unnamed in their records, remained motionless for a moment. And then, in a single instant, it came alive. Energy surged along its hull, illuminating its form in a deadly glow. Weapon systems powered up with a force that sent shockwaves rippling through space. The very fabric of the void seemed to twist around it. And then, without warning, it fired. A single shot. One blast of energy, brighter than a dying sun, erupted from the ship's main cannon. The beam tore through the void, slamming into the nearest Krill warship. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. Then the ship imploded. Not exploded, imploded, as if reality itself had rejected its existence. A vessel that had once held thousands of soldiers was gone in an instant, reduced to nothing but fading particles. Panic spread through the Krill fleet. Officers shouted. Pilots scrambled. Salzer himself gripped the edges of his command chair, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. Return fire, he roared. The Krill warships responded instantly, unleashing a barrage of plasma, missiles, and kinetic rounds. The void lit up with deadly fire. But as the attacks reached the human battleship, something horrifying happened. The projectiles vanished. The energy beams bent, redirected harmlessly into space. The missiles disintegrated before impact. It was as if the ship existed in a realm beyond the rules of conventional warfare. Salzer felt something he had not experienced in years. Fear. Full retreat, he shouted. It was not a tactical withdrawal. It was not a strategic repositioning. It was pure, desperate survival. The Krill fleet turned, engines flaring, trying to escape. But the human ship did not let them go. Another shot fired. Another warship erased. Then another, and another. The Krill fleet, once mighty, was being ripped apart, vessel by vessel. Salzer's command ship shook violently as an energy surge engulfed its rear engines. Alarms blared. Systems failed. A final transmission crackled across his speakers. A single voice. Cold. Unforgiving. You came for war, it said. Now war has come for you. Then the signal cut, and the human battleship disappeared in a pulse of impossible energy, leaving behind only silence. The Krill fleet was broken. The Dominion's forces had been shattered in a way they had never imagined. The message was clear. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not defenseless. Humanity had only just begun to fight. The void where the Krill fleet had once stood was now a silent graveyard. The remnants of shattered warships drifted aimlessly, torn apart by a force they never saw coming. No distress signals, no survivors, just wreckage and the echoes of destruction. The few Krill vessels that had managed to escape were speeding toward the Dominion's core systems, their crews still in shock, unable to comprehend what had just happened. They had come expecting an easy conquest. Instead, they had awakened something far worse. On board the Dominion's Central War Command, High Chancellor Vorkal stood motionless as he reviewed the footage. His massive form, draped in the finest battle regalia of the Krill, remained unnervingly still. Around him, the War Council murmured in disbelief. They had received the last transmission from Admiral Salzer's fleet before the signal was lost. No explanations, no requests for reinforcements, just one final, terrifying message. You came for war. Now war has come for you. For decades, the Krill Dominion had ruled through strength. They had conquered countless worlds, crushed defiant species and broken rebellions with ruthless precision. They had believed humanity was another easy target, a primitive species that had been expanding too fast for its own good. The Galactic Council had even warned them, cautioning that humans had a unique tendency to adapt, to fight beyond logic, to defy the inevitable. But the Dominion had laughed at the warnings. Humanity had seemed weak. And now an entire battle fleet had been erased from existence. One of the generals stepped forward hesitantly. "High Chancellor, this ship, the one that appeared, it is not in any of our records. We have no intelligence on its design, no known weapon signatures. No explanation." Vorkal finished for him. His voice was deep, a slow growl of barely contained anger. "We assumed they were weak." His eyes narrowed. "We were wrong." The chamber fell silent. The Krill Dominion had never encountered anything like this. A single human battleship had obliterated one of their strongest fleets in mere minutes. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it had vanished without a trace. How was that possible? No species had the technology to manipulate space so effortlessly. No warship should have been able to withstand the firepower of an entire fleet and remain untouched. But humanity had done it. One of the strategists, a veteran of countless wars, cleared his throat. "We should regroup our forces and prepare for immediate retaliation," he suggested. "We still control the majority of the outer systems. If we strike fast, we can overwhelm them before they—" They knew. Vorkal interrupted, his tone sharp. "Do you not see it? That ship, that thing, it didn't just destroy our fleet. It waited." His clawed fingers tapped against the stone table in front of him. "It allowed Salzer to send his message to us. It wanted us to know what had happened." His cold, reptilian eyes scanned the room. That was not a battle. That was a warning. The realization settled over the War Council like a suffocating weight. The humans had deliberately left survivors, not out of mercy, but to ensure the Krill Dominion knew exactly what they had unleashed. In the deep reaches of space, beyond the grasp of any known empire, the Neonices drifted in silence. It had returned to the void from which it came, unseen and undetectable. Inside, its command crew stood in the dim glow of their warship's central bridge, watching the remains of the battle fade from their screens. Admiral Elias Carter, the highest-ranking officer of the covert Phantom Initiative, let out a slow breath as he folded his arms. "They'll be afraid now," he murmured. Across from him, Captain Helena Drake gave a nod. "Afraid, yes. But fear doesn't stop empires like the Krill. It only makes them more dangerous." Carter studied the tactical display. The Krill Dominion was vast, stretching across hundreds of systems. A single victory, no matter how devastating, wouldn't stop them. This was just the beginning. "We gave them a warning," he said. "The question is, will they listen?" Helena's expression hardened. "If they don't, we'll make sure they regret it." The ship's AI, a highly advanced construct known as Sentinel, activated its primary interface. "Based on the Dominion's past behaviors, a retaliatory strike is highly likely," it stated. "Their pride will not allow them to back down so easily." The glowing digital form flickered for a moment before adding, "They will return with more ships. More weapons. More firepower." Carter exhaled slowly. "Then we show them what happens when they push humanity too far." Far away, in the hidden depths of Earth's most classified military installations, the final preparations were being made. Humanity had never wanted war. But if the Krill Dominion insisted on bringing it to their doorstep, they would find out humanity did not lose wars. They survived them. And they won. The Krill Dominion moved faster than expected. Within days of the massacre, their retaliation fleet was already in motion. Thousands of warships, each bristling with weaponry, surged through hyperspace, converging toward the frontier systems. The Dominion's response was brutal and immediate, an attempt to erase humanity before the threat could grow. They would not tolerate defiance. They would not allow a lesser species to challenge their rule. The Krill believed in overwhelming force, in striking with such power that their enemies never had a chance to rise again. But this time, they had no idea what they were walking into. Deep in the black void of space, far beyond any official human colony, the Nemesis lay in wait. Unlike standard warships, it had no recorded designation, no official existence in any database. It was a ghost, a specter of vengeance built in absolute secrecy. Every piece of its design defied conventional warfare. It did not fight battles. It ended them before they began. Admiral Elias Carter stood at the center of the command bridge, his gaze fixed on the strategic display. The Dominion's fleet was massive, stretching across the screen in an ocean of crimson-red markers. More ships than anyone had expected. More than anyone should have been able to field in such a short time. "They're not taking any chances," Captain Helena Drake muttered beside him. "They're bringing everything they have." Carter exhaled slowly. "Good." Helena shot him a look. "Good." Carter's expression remained unreadable. "We warned them. They ignored it. Now we make sure they never forget." The Nemesis drifted quietly, undetectable, its systems operating on complete stealth. No signals, no emissions. To the enemy, it was nothing but empty space. The ship's AI, Sentinel, calculated the battle conditions with cold efficiency. "The enemy fleet will enter our engagement zone in approximately 6 minutes," it reported. "Probability of them detecting us before first strike, 0%. Helena folded her arms. "They have no idea we're here." Carter nodded. "And by the time they do, it'll be too late." The Dominion fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Hundreds of warships, ranging from massive dreadnoughts to agile strike frigates, surged into real space with practiced precision. Their weapons primed, their defenses raised, their targeting systems scanning for any sign of human resistance. They found nothing. There were no ships, no defense stations, no colonies, just the cold emptiness of the void. Aboard the flagship, Supreme Warlord Kevor stood tall, his reptilian eyes narrowing. He had expected resistance. Even in their fear, the humans should have at least attempted to fight back. But there was nothing. "Where are they?" one of his officers murmured. Kevor bared his teeth. They ran. He turned to his bridge crew. "Launch recon squads. Spread out." If they fled, they left a trail. As the Dominion forces scattered, searching for their elusive prey, they failed to notice the disturbance behind them. A silent ripple in space. A shift in the void itself. The Nemesis moved. It was not like normal warships. It did not ignite engines in a flash of light. It did not announce its presence with a barrage of energy. Instead, it simply appeared. One moment, there was nothing. The next, the most dangerous warship in human history drifted behind the Dominion's rear formation, unnoticed. The ship's systems came alive. Power surged through its core, weapons prepared for destruction. Sentinel calculated firing solutions with mechanical precision. Carter gave the order. "Engage." A single pulse rippled through the void. A bright flash erupted from the Nemesis's primary cannon, and the nearest Krill warship didn't just explode, it ceased to exist. The blast did not create debris. It did not leave wreckage. The vessel was there 1 second and gone the next, erased from reality as though it had never been. Before the enemy fleet could react, a second shot fired. Another ship disappeared, then another, and another. Panic spread like wildfire. Kavor's eyes widened in horror as he finally spotted the source of the destruction. A single warship, just one, and yet it was tearing through his fleet like a god of death. "Turn all cannons," he roared. "Return fire. Now." The Krill fleet responded instantly. Hundreds of weapons locked onto the missiles and unleashed a storm of plasma and missiles. The void ignited with a barrage of firepower capable of annihilating entire fleets. But the missiles was unlike anything they had ever faced. The projectiles never reached their target. The very laws of physics seemed to warp around the ship. Plasma beams bent and scattered harmlessly into space. Missiles detonated prematurely, their guidance systems failing. The Dominion's most powerful weapons became useless in the face of an enemy they could not understand. Kavor's claws dug into the armrest of his command throne. Impossible. The Nemesis fired again. This time, the blast did not erase a single ship. It erased dozens. A chain reaction of destruction rippled through the fleet as warships collapsed in on themselves. Entire formations wiped out in an instant. The Krill forces had never known fear like this. Kavor snarled, "Retreat, full retreat." But there was nowhere to run. The Nemesis surged forward impossibly fast, closing the distance between itself and the Dominion's flagship. The massive Krill vessel tried to maneuver, to evade, but it was already too late. Carter's voice came through the ship systems, calm and final. "You came looking for a fight." The Nemesis unleashed one final blast. The Krill flagship disintegrated in a burst of raw energy. The remaining Dominion ships fled in terror, their once mighty invasion force reduced to scattered remnants. They would return to their homeworlds with a single message: humanity was not weak. Humanity was not afraid. And humanity had just begun. The Krill Dominion was in chaos. The survivors of the failed invasion limped back to their home systems, their warships shattered, their pride even more so. Rumors spread faster than any official reports, whispers of a single human battleship, a phantom that had obliterated an entire armada without suffering a scratch. Fear gripped the Dominion's highest war councils. The species they had mocked, the civilization they had deemed weak, had just committed an act of destruction on a scale never before seen. High Chancellor Vorkal stood in the heart of the Dominion's war chamber, his reptilian eyes scanning the silent faces of his commanders. None of them spoke. None of them dared. They had lost. Worse than that, they had been humiliated. The Dominion had not suffered such a defeat in centuries. It was unthinkable. Finally, one of the generals broke the silence. His voice was uneasy. We cannot ignore this. The humans have a weapon that defies all known technologies. If they turn it against our core worlds." "They won't," Vorkal interrupted, his voice low. "Not yet." His claws tapped against the cold metal table. This was a message. A warning. His eyes darkened. But warnings are only given once. The generals exchanged uneasy glances. They had seen the wreckage. They had heard the panicked reports from the surviving captains. The Nemesis was not a conventional warship. It did not fight like anything they understood. It was as if the humans had reached into the fabric of reality itself and reshaped it to their will. "They cannot possibly have more than one ship like this," another commander said. "If they did, they would have already come for us." Vorkal considered this. He wanted to believe it. He needed to. But something in his instincts told him otherwise. The humans had always been underestimated. If they had built one such warship, what if they had built more? We need information, he said at last. We need to know where that ship came from, what its weaknesses are, how many more exist. His gaze sharpened. We will send spies to infiltrate their systems. We will uncover their secrets. The War Council nodded in agreement, though the fear in their eyes remained. Meanwhile, deep in the void of uncharted space, the Neon-Essius drifted in silence. On its bridge, Admiral Elias Carter stood with arms folded, watching the aftermath of the battle play out on the tactical display. The krill had run. That was expected. But fear had a way of making desperate men even more dangerous. Captain Helena Drake stepped beside him. "They'll come back," she said simply. Carter nodded. "Of course they will." He glanced at her. "And we'll be waiting." Helena sighed, rubbing the back of her neck. "I can't believe we actually did it. We took down an entire fleet with one ship." Carter's expression remained serious. "We didn't just take down a fleet. We shattered the illusion of krill superiority." He turned to the holographic interface where the AI Sentinel was running complex probability simulations. "What are their likely responses?" Sentinel's glowing form flickered as it processed. "They will seek intelligence on our technology. They will attempt to infiltrate our networks. Given their history, they may also try diplomacy, but only as a means to delay us while they prepare a new offensive." Helena exhaled. "So it's not over." Carter gave a grim smile. "It never was." Back on Earth, in the underground command centers of the Phantom Initiative, the highest levels of human leadership were already preparing for the next step. The Neon-Essius had proven what humanity was capable of, but the war was far from over. The question was no longer whether the krill would strike again. The question was whether humanity would allow them the chance. "You said the krill dominion was bleeding. Their most powerful war fleet had been shattered, their pride crushed by a single human warship. But humiliation was a fire that could forge steel or burn everything to ashes. The Dominion was not defeated. Not yet. And in their desperation, they turned to something far more dangerous than brute force. They turned to the art of deception. On the surface of Korak Prime, the krill homeworld, the High Chancellor gathered his most cunning minds, the intelligence officers, the infiltrators, the silent knives that operated in the dark. In a chamber hidden beneath layers of security, they planned their next move. "If we cannot defeat them in battle," Vorkal growled, "then we will strike them where they do not expect. We will learn their secrets. We will uncover their weaknesses." His slitted eyes gleamed with cold determination. "And then, when the time is right, we will gut them from within." The plan was set in motion. Krill agents, disguised as neutral traders and political envoys, began slipping into human space. They used back channels, bribed corrupt officials, and hacked into lesser secured networks. Their goal was simple: to find out where the Neon-Essius had been built and how many more existed. If the humans had more than one of these warships, the Dominion was doomed. But the krill did not realize one simple truth. Humanity already knew they were coming. On the Neon-Essius, deep in the void between stars, Admiral Elias Carter stood on the bridge, reviewing intercepted transmissions. The ship's AI, Sentinel, had already detected krill infiltration attempts across multiple human colonies. The Dominion was searching for answers, desperate for them. "They're not even being subtle," Captain Helena Drake muttered as she read the reports. "They're throwing everything they have into this." Carter nodded, his expression unreadable. "Because they're afraid." He turned to the glowing interface where Sentinel processed vast amounts of data in milliseconds. "How much do they actually know?" "Very little," the AI responded. Their agents are skilled, but their understanding of human cybersecurity is primitive. Their primary focus is on locating the source of the Nemesis's construction. A pause. They will not find it. Carter allowed a small smile. Good. The Nemesis was no ordinary warship. It had not been built in any known human shipyard. No records existed. No blueprints were stored in official databases. It was a phantom brought to life in the shadows of human ingenuity. And the Krill were chasing ghosts. Still, Carter knew better than to be complacent. "They'll try something else," he murmured. Helena folded her arms. Sabotage. Assassination. Carter's gaze darkened. Or worse. And he was right. 3 days later, the unthinkable happened. A distress signal rang out from the human colony of New Avalon. A Krill fleet had arrived, not to attack, but under a banner of truce. They came bearing messages of peace, of understanding. The Dominion wanted negotiations. They wished to end the war. It was a lie. Carter and his crew watched the broadcast from the Nemesis's war room, studying every detail of the Krill Supreme Warlord's speech. His words were carefully chosen, his tone measured, but the deception was clear. The Krill wanted humanity to lower its guard. "This is bait," Helena said flatly. Carter didn't blink. "Of course it is." The Dominion had never sought peace before. They had enslaved or exterminated every species they encountered. The only reason they would talk now was because they feared what humanity could do if left unchecked. "They want time to regroup," Carter said. "They want to trick us into slowing down while they prepare their next move." Helena clenched her jaw. "So what do we do?" Carter's eyes burned with cold resolve. "We show them that humanity doesn't fall for tricks." The Nemesis turned toward New Avalon, its engines burning with silent fury. The Krill had made a grave mistake. They thought they could manipulate humanity. But humanity had already decided. This war would not end with words. It would end with fire. The Krill fleet hung over New Avalon like a false promise. Their ships, battered but still dangerous, sat in a silent formation near the colony's orbit, broadcasting nothing but their supposed intention for peace. Humanity had been given a choice: listen to the Dominion's words or remember their actions. On the bridge of the Nemesis, Admiral Elias Carter studied the holographic projection of the enemy fleet. He had seen war in all its forms. He knew when an enemy was beaten, and he knew when they were lying to buy time. "The Krill are waiting for us to make the first move," Captain Helena Drake said beside him. "They think we'll hesitate," Carter murmured. His fingers tapped against the metal railing as he considered the possibilities. The Krill's deception wasn't just a stall tactic, it was a test. If humanity accepted the peace talks, the Dominion would take it as weakness. If humanity attacked first, the Krill would use it as propaganda against them. "Sir," Sentinel's voice echoed through the bridge, calm and precise as always. "Our intelligence confirms increased fleet movements on the Krill home front. They are not negotiating in good faith. They are preparing for war." Carter exhaled slowly. "Then we don't give them what they want." Helena's brow furrowed. "We're not attacking." "No," Carter said, eyes still locked on the hologram. "We're going to make them show their hand first." On the surface of New Avalon, the Krill delegation arrived under heavy human security. The air was thick with tension as armored Terran soldiers flanked every street leading to the negotiation chambers. They had been given orders: watch, but do not engage unless provoked. High Chancellor Vorkal himself led the delegation, his reptilian features schooled into an expression of diplomatic neutrality. But behind those cold eyes was calculation. He could sense the humans' wariness. Good, let them doubt. Let them question. The conference room was a vast hall, built not long after humanity had first colonized New Avalon. Vortal and his advisors took their seats across from the human delegation, led by a senior ambassador and several high-ranking officers. Humanity has proven to be resilient, Vorkal began, his voice smooth. We underestimated your strength, and for that, we acknowledge our mistake. We do not wish for more bloodshed. The human ambassador did not respond immediately. Instead, he studied Vorkal as if looking through him. Then he leaned forward. The Dominion has never negotiated peace before, the ambassador said. Why now? Vorkal did not hesitate. Because war with humanity is not beneficial to either of us. Our fleets have suffered. So have yours. A silence stretched between them. Then the ambassador smiled. You're lying. Vorkal tensed, his claws curling slightly. I assure you. No, the ambassador interrupted, his voice sharper now. You're lying because you're afraid. Your fleets didn't just suffer. They were annihilated. By one ship. He let the words settle, watching the flicker of emotion in the Krill's eyes. And you're here because you know if we have more ships like that, your Dominion won't survive the next war. Vorkal's jaw tightened, but he forced himself to remain composed. We are offering peace. It would be wise for humanity to. The doors to the chamber burst open. A human officer rushed in, his expression grim. He approached the ambassador and whispered something in his ear. The ambassador's face hardened. Then he turned back to Vorkal, his smile gone. We just intercepted a transmission from your fleet near our border worlds. The ambassador said, voice low and sharp. You're mobilizing for war as we speak. Vorkal's silence was answer enough. The ambassador stood. Negotiations are over. Above New Avalon, the Krill fleet received this silent order from their leadership. The humans would not be fooled, and so the deception ended. Weapons powered up. The fleet turned its cannons toward the colony. They thought humanity would hesitate, that they would scramble for defenses. They never realized humanity was already prepared. High above, hidden in the blackness of space, the Nemesis watched. Its stealth systems had masked its presence from Krill sensors, its advanced targeting systems tracking every enemy ship before they had even armed their weapons. On the bridge, Carter stood still as the warning sirens blared across the colony. The Krill had made their choice. His voice was cold, unforgiving. Fire. The Neonesis unleashed hell. In a single instant, beams of searing energy sliced through the Krill fleet like paper. Explosions erupted in perfect, calculated succession. The Dominion's warships never even had the chance to return fire. Within minutes, the once threatening armada was nothing but burning wreckage. On New Avalon's surface, Vorkal and his advisors watched in horror as their fleet was obliterated before their eyes. The human soldiers around them raised their weapons. The war had been decided the moment the Krill had thought they could manipulate humanity. Now they would pay the price. The ruins of the Krill fleet still burned in New Avalon's orbit. Wreckage drifted in the void, the final remains of the Dominion's deception. On the surface, the war was no longer a battle of words. It was over. Vorkal, High Chancellor of the Krill Dominion, stood frozen in the negotiation hall, his reptilian face unreadable. Around him, his advisors were silent, their claws twitching with barely contained fury. The humans had known. They had not been deceived, and when the moment came, they had struck without hesitation. He turned his gaze to the large screen on the wall, where the burning husks of Krill warships floated in the void. It was not a battle. It was an execution. Then the door opened. Admiral Elias Carter entered the chamber. He walked with calm, deliberate steps, flanked by armed Terran soldiers. The air in the room seemed to tighten. Vorkal had never met the man before, but he knew him. The one who commanded the Neon Aces. The human responsible for the destruction of countless Krill fleets. Carter didn't sit. He simply looked at Vorkal. "You never wanted peace," Carter said. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the room like a blade. "You wanted time. Time to rebuild. Time to find a way to stop us." He took a step closer. "You thought humanity would hesitate. That we would second-guess ourselves." His eyes burned cold. "You were wrong." Vorkal clenched his jaw. The weight of his failure settled onto his shoulders like a crushing force. He had underestimated the humans once before, but this time he had doomed the Dominion. Carter took another step. "Your fleet is gone. Your war is lost." His voice remained calm, but there was something in it. Something Vorkal had never heard before. Finality. "I am willing to accept surrender," Carter continued. "But there will be no conditions. The Dominion will kneel. Your people will answer for what they have done." Vorkal bared his fangs. "You expect us to simply submit." Carter tilted his head slightly. "I expect you to understand reality." He gestured to the screen. "Your empire is built on war, on conquest, on fear." He leaned in slightly. "But fear only works on those who cannot fight back." His voice dropped lower, colder. "And humanity fights back." The Krill delegation exchanged glances. Some looked furious, others uncertain. For the first time in their history, they were no longer the dominant force in the galaxy. Vorkal's claws twitched. "You think this is the end?" He bared his teeth in a grimace. "Even if I surrender, others will not. The Dominion will rise again." Carter held his gaze, unshaken. Then he simply said, "No, it won't." And that was when Vorkal truly understood. Humanity was not like the other species the Dominion had conquered. They would not stop until the Krill were broken, until the threat was gone forever. Silence stretched through the room. Then Vorkal did something no Krill leader had ever done before. He lowered his head. A gesture of surrender. The war was over. In the aftermath, the galaxy watched. The once feared Krill Dominion crumbled, its surviving fleets dismantled, its leaders imprisoned. Humanity had not just won the war. They had ended it. But it was more than that. The balance of power in the stars had shifted. The species that had once been seen as weak, as fragile, had become the strongest force in the galaxy. The Nemesis had proven it. Humanity had proven it. And now, as the ashes of war settled, one truth remained. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again.